Welcome to the Jump Off Point. I am Sly.
And I am Vibranium-filled Spook.
Chief's not with us tonight, but Spook and I went and saw Black Panther, which everybody is raving about. Nearly everybody. Spook, what did you think of Black Panther?
Well, why are you starting with me?
Alright, you want me to start?
No, I'm only kidding because the Chief's not here. I thought it was pretty boring. Without making this a statement on what's making this film incredibly popular, I don't think we need to go into too much depth there. I think as a movie in itself, it was devoid of a lot of what a superhero movie should be about. And there are wow moments. There was nothing in this film that I felt, wow, that was fantastic to look at. It was like, I could imagine if I was a pedestrian and I chose today to watch people walk past on the street for a day. That's what watching this film felt like to me. What about you?
I actually had a lot of problems with this film. I didn't think it was bad, not like, any of the DC movies. I wasn't sitting there that angry. I was angry a little bit.
Oh, I've got some issues to talk about.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, it's interesting you said it doesn't feel like a superhero movie. I thought the first quarter of it felt like a Bond movie. It was like this little spy thriller they were trying to build up. It didn't work like a... Sorry, it felt like a modern-day Bond movie, which are equally boring.
It was a bland backfilling of the history of Wakanda and why, for all their wonder, they chose to ignore the fucking
I actually really liked that it was a standalone movie. It wasn't connected to the greater Marvel universe in any way, because I'm sort of getting a little tired of trying to follow the Marvel grand story, which has been spread over, 16, 17 films over 28 years or whatever it is.
Well, the grand story seems to be digging as deep as they can into characters no one has ever really heard of before.
But as a story, I really felt it wasn't that great. So, Black Panther becomes the king. They foreshadowed the challenge well. He fought a challenger. That guy comes back later. Great. But it was like, what's the actual story about? And it actually, to me, mirrored Dark Knight Rises a lot, because you get the villain coming, breaking the superhero's back, and then he makes the comeback and he wins. And honestly, I really don't like that in terms of the story arc, because, Killmonger throws Black Panther or T'Challa off the waterfall edge or cliff edge or whatever you want to call it.
That'd be a spoiler.
Yeah, I'll take a guess. It's going to be all spoilers. Jeez, I wonder if he'll come back.
No, I expect him to just float away with the rest of the garbage.
And it's stuff like that where I just think you're given the story beats where there's no choice but to go a certain direction.
Well, the film ends if he doesn't come back.
Yeah, the film ends, and that's the thing. It's really just sort of bland.
Shock me. Give me something new.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking about this in the cinema. I was thinking it's a lot like Dark Knight Rises. In Dark Knight Rises, Batman gets his back broken by Bane. It's like, oh, geez, I wonder where this could possibly go. And I don't think that actually works. And then I start thinking about Superman 2, which has a similar beat that Superman gives up his powers for Lois. But I was thinking, Superman 2 is different. This is talking about the Richard Donner Superman movies, not the imposters that have come out lately.
The shitfists.
Yeah. I was thinking, but that actually, Superman sacrifices his powers for love. He never actually faces the villain. So you never set up this fight rematch type arc. In Superman, it's more about the journey of, I realise my importance to the greater good of humanity, that I actually can't afford love in my life, not in that way. And that's actually got a resonance in terms of the character's depth and all that, whereas this is just like, you lose, okay, you're obviously going to need to win at some point to get back into this. And I found this one extreme, so I should say this one, because Dark Knight Rises is equally contrived. It's like he gets thrown into water, okay, and then apparently some people found him and put him on some ice. Like, literally put him on ice.
I know, but I still can't work that out. He fell downwards in the middle of Africa into a river, got found by some fishermen, and then they took him to a region completely, as far as the eye could see, was covered in snow. Now, I know snow's in Africa. You get some high-range mountains there. But how the fuck does this place all coexist, Wakanda, and you have all these pretty much 4 seasons in one continent going on, and no one knows about the fucking place?
I know, actually...
In the age of drones and satellite imagery and everything, they keep themselves hidden because there's a hologram over a hill.
Okay, and I actually want to backtrack briefly. So, T'Challa is going to become king.
Sorry, okay.
Yep, to the Wakanda people. No, that's okay. Wakanda people, but there's a right of challenge. So anyone else from any other, chieftain of a tribe or whatever can challenge him.
And boy, do I have issues with this bit.
And this is one of the issues I have actually with the Star Trek mythology of the Klingons. It's like the storyline here establishes these Wakandans as superior technologically. And yet they're still fucking going on ritualistic challenges to determine who is in charge of them. It's like, are you serious? That's like the Klingons in Star Trek. It's like they're really advanced. They've explored the galaxy and all that sort of shit. But they've still got houses and challenges and all that. It's like, I don't think fucking a race this advanced would still be just basing it on, oh, I challenge you, king. I want the fucking throne. And everyone else would be going, yeah, we'll get this butthead possibly as king. It just wouldn't happen. It's ridiculous. And that really fucking shitted me. I'm watching going, the whole story's about how advanced you are. But you're still fucking basing your whole lineage on, well, someone's got a right to challenge and become king. If you're fucking advanced, maybe you should have some democratic elections. God, no, let me challenge him.
The issue I had with this is the fact that you elect and you super empower an individual to be the Black Panther, and when it comes to challenge time, you take away his abilities. So this is a person that's been given an unfair advantage right from the get-go, will fight with that unfair advantage, and then all of a sudden is deemed unworthy because he fails to meet a challenge because he doesn't have those powers anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
You've learned everything that you're going to be with those abilities. When you come back to being a normal person, there's no advantage in terms of what I've learned. I may have been Black Panther for 20 years. You take away my abilities, and I get my shit kicked out of me by a 20-year-old who's then deemed to be more worthy. It's almost like a... maybe it's meant to be a parallel, like Pride lines or something, where an older line is bested by another one. For whatever. But what it made me feel watching this is it's like, imagine that every time you watched a Superman movie and Superman did some incredible fucking things. I've saved a bus full of people by lifting it up in the air, a building falls down and I hold it up, and then Lex Luthor challenges me and I deactivate my powers to fight him like a real man would.
Well, I mean...
It doesn't ring true.
No, and psychologically, I think, too, if you were a superhero for... I mean, I don't know how long the Black Panther in this particular movie has been a superhero.
About 5 days, apparently.
But if you're a superhero and you've learned to rely on the invulnerability that those powers give you, once you remove that invulnerability, those powers, you think you'd be shit, because psychologically you would have totally been programmed to rely on, I can absorb great amounts of pain, I have greater reflexes and all that sort of stuff. Then you get turned into a mortal, it's like, but your mind should still be in that gear. There's probably times when you're a superhero, you'd be thinking, I'll take that punch because I can actually take that punch. But when you're immortal, it'll be like, oh, if that's the first fight you're going to have, you're just going to get your head punched in.
It's a great trope that works in superhero films and comics to a point where when you've got an established character that's got his abilities, and when they're taken away, it reminds them about how special this gift or this ability actually is. It's always that sort of reminder, remembrance, looking back, I've been wonderful, but now I have to appreciate again what I've got, because when I don't have it, I'm just an ordinary person.
But that goes back to that Superman 2 trope of, he sacrifices for love, and then he gets the shit kicked out of him by just a bully at a fucking diner. And he realizes, and that's a good thing about, and that actually does it really well. It does what I just said. In Superman 2, he challenges someone and he gets punched, and it's like, shit, I didn't realise I could be hurt. I didn't realise I'd bleed.
The moment where he bleeds,
and that's something that...
shock when he's looking at blood. I've never seen blood before.
And
that's what the guy should have said to him.
I see the stuff like that he turns his back on the bully. He doesn't even, it doesn't even click to him that, that's probably a bad move. But as Superman, that's the way he would have thought. I can turn my back to anyone because no one can actually hurt me. So he was always attuned to his superhero abilities. Whereas in this, it's just like, well... surely once you give those abilities up, you could get your ass handed to you. I mean, the other thing too with the challenge that really fucking annoyed me, not in that first challenge, which is pretty much annoying in itself, but when Killmonger had challenged him, if you watch pro wrestling or if you watch old pro wrestling, the wrestlers always talk about like you should be telling the story in the ring. You should be telling the story of how this fight's going to go. And then I'm watching this movie, and it seems to me that Black Panther or T'Challa he's very easily handling Killmonger in the first half of the fight. He wins him a few times. He seems to be on top of the fences really quickly, and you think, okay, so he's just sort of toying with him. But in the second half of the fight is not commensurate with what you just saw, because then Killmonger just pounds the crap out of him. And I just didn't sort of get it. Was like, well, who's the greater talent here? Who's the more capable? Because that fight hasn't told us anything, because they both had halves. And I guess someone could say, oh, well, in the fight, it only takes one slip up to, mess up. But to me, it just sort of didn't tell any real story. And then the fucking big problem is Killmonger picks up T'Challa and throws him off the cliff edge. And then, T'Challa goes through that whole being rescued and, thrown in on some ice and resuscitated. And then he reappears later to Killmonger, who's now been anointed the king. And people go, oh, the challenge is not over. I would have thought the fucking challenge was over once you threw him over the cliff edge. I mean,
Presumed dead. Presumed challenge complete.
Yes.
Hang on, he's come back! The challenge is back on!
I mean, in wrestling, they have a count out. If you don't get back into the fight in a certain time, it's done. And, you're establishing that the king's meant to have this absolute power, but then everyone just sort of disobeys him because they like T'Challa better. It's like, oh, well.
Yeah, but T'Challa, has he proved himself at that point, really? He's done one or two things.
And then I don't understand that too, because in that original challenge, when he gets anointed king, Forrest Whitaker, I forgot his character's name, Zuri, I think, he gave T'Challa some concoction which took away his superpowers.
No, that's what, go on.
And then later on, when T'Challa fights Killmonger, T'Challa drinks this concoction which takes away his superpowers. But then later on, after Killmonger wins, he drinks the concoction to get the superpowers. But then after T'Challa's resuscitated, he just comes in and fights Killmonger, and I'm thinking, but wasn't the concoction the thing that actually took away your powers and gave you powers? You've given up your powers, but you never actually got them back. So how is it you're fighting a guy who's actually drank that concoction to get your powers? I didn't understand, unless there was meant to be an arc of it's not about the concoction. You have the Black Panther within you and all that sort of stuff.
Well, they sort of alluded to that. That was the origin of the character. It was supposed to be infused with the abilities of the god, but the god pretty much fucked off after his apparition appeared, apart from the ex-kings who manifested as panthers and then became humans looking. But there was no... I'm probably a little bit befuddled about what the origin of the panther powers are. Panther powers.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
he's like not invulnerable because the fucking suit pretty much is the Iron Man suit of this film.
Oh, it's better than the Iron Man suit.
And it stops everything up until the point where it doesn't have to stop something.
And there was a few times his sister, sorry, I forgot her name.
Q.
Oh, Q. And she introduced, once the suit takes a pounding, it absorbs that power and can redistribute it. Yeah, and I was like watching the movie throughout and thinking, that didn't always apply. There was times that, didn't redistribute the kinetic energy and all that. The overall plot with Killmonger, he wanted to become king because his dad had been dudded.
The uncle.
Yeah, he had been dudded and he wanted to distribute vibranium all around the world.
See...
Which doesn't seem to me like a really bad...
No, I reckon I actually felt the most association with any characters in this film is that I thought Killmonger's reasonings for his actions were perfectly fucking reasonable. You looked at this Wakanda race, and they've pretty much sat on their fucking hands for how long? The rest of Africa's been fucking savaged and sent off for slavery, and they just sit there going, well, we're protecting this because reasons.
Yeah.
And then the world went through a war and a Second World War and all sorts of conflict, and we sat on our hands because of reasons.
Yep.
And we intended to keep sitting on our hands because of reasons. Yeah, and he comes in there and says, I think there was a great line in there, and I can't quote it verbatim, but it was something along the lines of, why have you been sitting on your hands for reasons? 2 million or 2 billion of our
Yeah.
people have been fucking suffering. And you think, well, your fucking motivations are actually bang on here. I'm actually more sympathetic to the bad guy in this film than I can ever remember being sympathetic to a bad guy in any film.
Well, I mean,
and he's not really, his motivations are actually probably reasonably, honourable. And they try and take them a little bit by saying, well, you take the vibranium, the thing that it's impervious to everything unless you've got an energy arm. Unless, of course, then it doesn't make you impervious if you've got it woven into your suit or something. But, vibranium is the answer to everything. And
at the end of the movie...
And it's the thing that generates the most questions as well.
After the Killmonger had been defeated and died, at the end of the movie, T'Challa and that held a press conference just saying, well, we're going to share vibranium to the world. It's like, well, wasn't that your enemy's... probably he had it more... he was more thinking of in military purposes, but it's like, well, you've sort of fought this whole fucking battle to withhold vibranium. You fought Killmonger to stop him. Surely you could have just come to a compromise with Killmonger and said, okay, we'll share it, but there's got to be limitations and there's got to be parameters that we establish so it's not abused and all that sort of stuff. And it just sort of seemed like a self-defeating defense is like, oh, yeah, we're going to fight you so you don't share vibranium. And after we beat you, we're going to share some vibranium.
Explain to me also, too, with this vibranium, it's supposed to be the most impervious metal on the planet, and it hit...
It does anything. It heals.
But that's the thing. And it hit Wakanda a couple of centuries ago or something. And, granted, look, if a big rock of the hardest fucking lump of metal landed in my backyard... I wouldn't expect to walk away thinking, I can probably build a great technological nation based on this really fucking hard metal.
But
there was no sense. Did it make you smarter? Did it make you?
But I am going to portray the nation as primitive, and we're going to withhold this knowledge. And you think like if vibranium hit whenever it hit, years ago. You think the people at that time would just be too stupid to realise, not stupid, but not developed enough to realise, oh, we should hide this.
Dangerous territory.
Yeah, oh no, but that just
No, you're right. I mean,
why would you, how would you have the knowledge and maturity when you're a primitive race to say we should hide this from the rest of the world when you probably don't even know anything beyond your borders?
Yeah, I don't understand how they become such a technological and advanced superpower based on the fact that some really unbreakable metal fell in my backyard. It just doesn't make sense.
Can I just throw a total aside? I can't remember the guy's name because I don't think they ever mentioned it. What the fuck? Sorry, spoil it. What the fuck was with the guy with the big plate in his lip? What the fuck was going on there?
And they were colour-coded to the suits he was wearing.
Yes.
That was magnificent.
It was like, what the...
I mean, surely there we're just honouring different representations of African nations. You had the ones with the like wearing the rings around the neck. And I'm going to plead ignorance here. I'm not sure what they're called. The ones with the big lip. You're sort of covering the ones with the tattoos. It sort of looked like a visual representation of a lot of African culture. That's the only thing I can take away from it. But
that's again,
I actually fucking no. I mean, I actually thought it was fucking pretty good that no matter what he was wearing in terms of a colourful suit, that the lip plate matched.
Was the match? Yeah, I just again, it was one of these things where I looked at it and just think, oh, you're a technologically advanced culture who has all this great science, and yet every other behaviour is primitive. You're still, just doing...
It's honouring the past. I mean, it's...
It's one of these things, like, if you look at most shows... I'll take sci-fi shows, for example. You look at something like Star Trek and all that. And that ultimately has something like science becomes our absolute. We still have our beliefs and all that, but science is our absolute. Except when it comes to the alien races. The alien races are still very religious and culturally embedded in some primitive beliefs, and you just sort of look and go, and like this is why I always use the Klingons as an example. You look at it, the Klingons, how feudal they. I think there's no way you guys ever would have gotten out to the stars because you would have fucking just destroyed each other. And it's even worse in Discovery because apparently they could destroy a whole federation without being united and got pulled back. I don't know, shouldn't go into that. And I just think as you grow more mature, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, all that, you start to prioritize what's important to your culture, what you need to believe in and all that. And this might upset some people, but if 200 years ago you had a child and the child was sick, you might pray and burn some incense and sing some fucking chants, and you'd think that would heal the child. Now, if your child is sick, you take it to the fucking doctor. You don't rely on prayers. And that's where science has taken over, because that's become our absolute. That's what we believe in. Science actually provides those answers, whereas previously we're relying on faith. So as the culture evolves, different belief systems start to reprioritize as to where you think you're going to get your wisdom and your solutions. In this sort of movie where, they're that fucking advanced, I think, surely you would have abandoned some of this really primitive shit, because to me it is, when you have this society which is apparently so volatile with vibranium, which can fucking do anything, you're not going to let the possibility of some random challenge totally destabilize that government and distribute the vibranium so responsibly. And to me, that was just sort of ridiculous.
I think the message of this film, though, was always about honouring and recognising facets of African culture. That was always... I don't want to use the word agenda, but I think it was always going to be something that was going to be visible there. I personally, I didn't see that as too much of a distraction.
I didn't say that yet, but it I went into this movie just watching it as a movie. I didn't try to politicize it, wasn't trying to look at agendas. For me, whenever I read, watch, whatever, any sort of story, it's just like, okay, just entertain me with what you got, and if I can buy in, I'll buy in if you sell it to me. And this, it just, there was that whole primitive culture with this, it was this technologically advanced culture still representing themselves primitively, and still using really primitive modes of government alone. It's not going to happen. At some point, that would have changed if you're that advanced.
I didn't see that as too much of a distraction. I wasn't particularly phased about that. I think just getting back to what you were saying before, though, about the movie in itself, if you took away, and you mentioned about taking away the political and cultural and racial aspects of it, which is something that people are always going to want to talk about with this one. If you stripped all that away, at the core, this just wasn't a great movie.
No.
It's doing gangbusters at the box office. And,
it wasn't a terrible movie, it just wasn't great.
It just wasn't... It's almost like I started the car, put it into first gear, and at some point I changed to second, and I thought that's it for the rest of the journey. There was nothing out of the box wonderful or amazing about it.
It's very much...
Superhero films should be taking you to that extreme. Yeah. It should be super hero, not just average, everyday hero. And look, I'm not very much downgrading the Black Panther character. I think I'll come into this admitting that I don't really know a lot about Black Panther. To me, he was just a tier 3, tier 4 thing when I was growing up reading comics, which is nothing racially meant to read into that. But it just wasn't visible on my spectrum, and I don't know a lot about it. I don't know a lot about the backstory, the character. I never knew that it was a popular character. It certainly wasn't staring me in the face since I was a kid walking in and buying comics. I didn't really know too much about it.
I just thought it was emblematic of a lot of Marvel movies. It's just... I can see why people would think it was good. It's just relatively solid but bland, with maybe a couple of moments. Yeah, it's cool, but mostly just, as you said before, the analogy, you just don't get the car out of the second gear. It really just sort of plodded along, and understand again why it might be popular, because it's pioneered a black superhero and all that in today's superhero culture, and that's great. But to me, it just still wasn't a fantastic movie.
No,
it really got it. I really sort of kept waiting for it to jump. A few times I thought, it might be cool. Nah, it's not going to get cool. And it became, about halfway through, I just actually started looking at my watch thinking, this is not going anywhere where I think I really need to care. I mean, it's one of these movies, if I had to sort of break down my rating system of movies, it'd be like, am I fixed to the screen? Am I starting to play on my phone? Am I starting to look at, at the internet on my phone, all that sort of stuff, because I don't really need to be that focused on what's going on in the background. And then for the first half of this movie, just that. It's like, I felt, okay, I'm giving this a chance. And then just after that first half, I felt, I'm just going to start to look at, other things. And it's not just this movie. I mean, I think a number of the Marvel movies are like this. They never get out of...
There's a saturation point that's well and truly been reached.
And then, the Marvel movies aren't terrible. They're all relatively solid. A few have higher points and all that. But if I look back at the Marvel movies, I think, what was the last great Marvel movie? And I don't think there's ever really been a great Marvel movie.
Well,
there's been
inside
some very
of that
good ones.
particular universe, because you'd be looking at things like Deadpool and Logan.
But they belong to this particular... They're independent of...
They're in parallel with the Marvel universe.
But they're not part of this particular Marvel universe. No. And, I think Logan's a great movie. I think Deadpool's a very good movie. But in this particular universe, with these particular characters and this particular canon, I think maybe the original Iron Man's probably still the best of these movies, which knew how to sort of juggle the reverence of the character with the funny bits and the lighter bits. And
Iron Winter Soldier was up there as well. But we could do a whole other piece on this.
Yeah, but... I mean, they're not like the DC movies, which are just terrible. Wonder Woman gets a rap, and that's really a Marvel movie.
That's just bewildering.
That's just sort of a really average movie. In fairness to Wonder Woman, going off on the tangent, the first 15 minutes I loved. I was like, this is going to be fucking great. I really love it. And then it just sort of jumped, and I was like, oh, okay. And it just stayed very bland throughout. And the Wonder Woman character is really funny that she's still pining after Steve Trevor 100 years after.
Still in Justice League, she's pining.
Yeah, still whining about him and all that. And you think, geez, you want to write a strong female character, and she's just been in mourning for 100 years. But anyway, that's a totally different story. That's a question for another time, Spook. In terms of this movie, I just didn't find it that compelling. And, in fairness to this movie, was the last movie in 4? Were we that disinterested during 4? 4 Ragnarok?
No, not as bad as this. It was a bit... the issue for me with Thor was just the forced humour that just kept falling flat for me. But other than that, it was an enjoyable sort of movie, but it just had its moments of that it kept distracting me back to an area that I didn't really want this film to be taking me towards.
I really think the biggest problem, not just with these movies, the Marvel movies, but also the DC movies. And the DC movies are a lot more...
shit?
Yeah, I was going to say objectionable because I use that word a lot. But there's a sense of inevitability about them, about where they're going, what's going to happen. These beats...
Bleak.
Yeah. And,
joyless.
Yeah, but there's also what's going to happen. In this movie too, there was a few times they said things like, "Geez, I wonder what's going to happen next," because they foreshadowed it. And maybe
it's like the fucking train sonic lights.
Yeah,
Christ, that was foreshadowed. She could have actually probably pumped it up in big letters on the screen in case anyone had fucking missed it.
Well, that's the thing. I'm just saying, we're probably a lot more wiser and aware as audiences now, but they just don't surprise me.
No, and the setups are so blatantly fucking obvious.
Actually, just to sort of point out, something like Logan surprised me. That one, that movie, which, it's featuring 2 superhero characters, or 2.5 if you count Wolverine Jr., I was watching that and just, except for that one bit about when they gave him the serum at the end, he said, take one of these vials or 2s, don't take more than that because you'll get fucked up. Like, geez, I don't know what'll happen. That was probably the only time, but you were surprised by the choices. Deadpool, to an extent, that was very similar. But, and then you go back to the Christopher Nolan first 2 Batman movies. Even if you did predict beats, they did them in such a way where you felt, oh, fuck, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty cool. Whereas this film, it really is becoming paint by numbers. It's really becoming so formulaic that you just sit there waiting for it to fulfill its journey. It is seriously like getting on a train to ride to work 10 years in a row and just expecting something different will happen. But no, you know what? It's always going to be the same journey.
I was just thinking about what you were saying then, and if you wanted to draw a parallel between this and Deadpool, and for me, that's probably a reasonable parallel because they were 2 characters I knew very little about. I knew
nothing about either.
I stopped reading comics. These characters must have either come to fruition or been dragged out of the void. But I knew nothing about them going in. Deadpool fucking surprised me about how entertainingly good it was. And this is where, I guess, and what you were talking about just then is it's almost like it's a comfort zone for these films have to be in. There's a fluffy pillow and a cushion, and you sit in the chair and you're all comfortable because doesn't matter who this character is, it's going to take me on a very similar journey to what these rest of these films have been doing. Things like Deadpool and Logan, to a certain extent, took risks. Yeah, they took these characters off into completely different directions, or it was a character that maybe was completely unrecognisable to what your mainstream audiences are used to,
and that made them Man of Steel.
But that makes them instantly interesting.
Yeah.
I never got that sense out of this character that he could have been someone that's been around for 100 years, and I've read about him, and I really know everything I need to know, and there's nothing you're going to show me on the screen that surprises me. But you should be, because I don't know who the fuck this person is. I should be surprised by the actions or the drivers or the motivations. I just didn't get any sense of that. It was just all bland.
Actually, the other thing too I was thinking about with this movie, when he was being challenged by Killmonger and they're having a fight, and it's just like, geez, which way is this going to go? Because if he beats Killmonger, the movie's over. So Killmonger must win. But if Killmonger wins, then obviously that's not going to be the final victory, because that would mean the movie's over. So, anyway, but like while I was watching that battle, I was thinking this would have worked so much better if it was a second movie, because we'd have had like all the background and context of the character, would have cared about the character.
We don't have enough patience in the audience these days.
Yeah, but I mean, again, we often fall back to comparisons with the Richard Donner Superman movies, and the reason we fall back is they're really well told stories. They've obviously got like flaws; they're a bit campy at times and all that. But geez, they were made 40 years ago. They were pioneering the superhero the genre, and you look at that, they spend the whole movie getting you to know Superman, getting you to like Superman. They pit him against the human villain, so you're watching it and thinking, well, you know what, I'm human, I should be going with the human guy, but the human villain is such a prick that I'm going to side with Superman, and it's awesome. And then by the time they bring the Kryptonians in the second movie, you're just fully allied with Superman. And then when they take his powers away and all that sort of stuff, you really feel for him because you've spent time with him. You've humanized the character. You've actually... the thing about Superman, the great thing about Superman is for all his power, he's still humble. He still believes in the greater potential of the human race, which I actually don't see in any other superhero character. Probably the closest you get is like in Batman in the Dark Knight, when the Joker has two bombs on the fairies going out, and he expects one of them to blow up the other, but they don't, and Batman just sort of says, you probably shouldn't be expecting the worst from humans and all this, or from us, and that's probably the one time you sort of see the superhero totally empathize with the people he's protecting. In these movies, it's just so told so rapidly and slapdash. You don't have any time to connect with characters. You don't have any time to connect with their motivations. You don't have any time to invest in them. So, like when T'Challa of Black Panther was thrown over the edge of the cliff there, I was like, well, yeah, I don't really care. I don't know him that well.
No, that's exactly right. Okay. No, I don't care what happens to any of them. I probably cared more about what happened to Killmonger.
Yeah,
because I think he was the most. He was the only character in this film that really had, or come across as having a strong reason for being. The rest of them were more than happy to just sit in their hands because of reasons.
Yep. Well, I know. I don't think we can really, thrash this out much further.
Did you have a jump-off point?
I had a massive jump-off point during the car chase scene where the car was blown up. I forgot the character's name. It was Nakia, I think. But she just flies through the air after the car's been blown up. And you think, well, this is a fatal death blow.
This is the vibranium car that was impervious up until this point.
Yeah, and she just reaches out like Princess Leia to her spear. She catches it, plants it in some, debris.
Yeah, I think it was the bitumen on the road or something.
Yeah, I think it was like a panel of the car or something.
But the roof of the car she landed on. There.
Yeah, and she just sort of skated to safety. And then moments later, who was it, Okay or Shuri? I can't remember. But one of them just sort of slid up, still holding the steering wheel of the car.
In the car seat.
In the car seat. Nothing else, just slid up. I
comedy relief.
Fucking hate these scenes, because when you do fucking scenes like this, and I had a big problem like with Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when Drax is just surfing outside the ship and shooting with a bloody a rifle or a blaster. when you do scenes like this, you just totally undermine that there will be any peril in this movie. Because if characters are surviving crap like that, well, why would I ever believe that would get hurt? Why would I ever feel that they might get hurt? And like again, we'll go back to Superman.
Just on that one though, before you go into the Superman thing, it's totally unrealistic not to expect in that type of situation for the character, as the seat comes to a halt, the steering wheel always is just swinging around their neck.
But it's just, you look at something like Superman, he's meant to be invulnerable, so he can take an explosion and all that, but even with Superman, he actually gets recoil, in those original movies. If something explodes, he actually sort of feels the percussion of it and all that. In these movies, they're taking on explosions and then just sort of, I'll fly through the air uncontrollably, but I'll just land properly because
my momentum will carry me through. It doesn't matter, there's a negative force.
I can't buy into movies when you do shit like this. Because if you survive that, what aren't you going to fucking survive? And, I know they're meant to be cool things and all that, but I would rather... I was actually watching a bit of John Wick 2 yesterday. I was telling someone else who was with me who hadn't seen any of it. I was just telling her a bit about the backstory and how it goes. And I was going, the good thing about John Wick, you look at him, he's basically a superhero character in that universe. But he takes a pummeling. He takes such a beating throughout those two movies. And that's great because, when he takes the beating, you actually feel for him. You realise he's got limits. You realise, he could be stopped. These movies, you do things like that, you just think, well, okay, fuck, you survived that. We're 10 minutes, 15 minutes into the movie. What aren't you going to survive in this movie? You're not going to fucking die because you survived that shit. You're not going to actually be in any peril at any time. And actually, that scene too reminded me a lot. I was going to say it to you when I watch it. It fucking reminded me a lot of Legolas jumping on the barrels in bloody The Hobbit too. It was like so physically unrealistic.
The Hobbit, the arcade game.
It was just so unrealistic in terms of the physics and the way it all unfolded. I just thought, fuck off! I can't buy in. Anyway, so do you have a jump off point?
I just want to just quickly say that if you're completely unfamiliar with the John Wick character, you can look him up on Wikipedia. My jump off point...
Cricket's chirping.
It was probably that gag. My jump off point, as I alluded to before, was the removal of the powers to have the challenge. I don't know whether it would have made it better, but for me, with my limited reasoning, I would have rather have seen... If you're challenging someone with superpowers and super inebriated abilities, the challenger should have taken the same serum to give them an equal edge. And then that gives you a sense of, are they worthy to carry on these abilities because they've bested the champion? To send them back, it's like Spider-Man isn't Spider-Man when he doesn't have his abilities. Superman's not Superman if he doesn't have abilities. They're just men. And men could be shit fighters. And all these characters, when they lose their powers, are proven to be shit. This was just a really dumb way of doing it. And that took me out. What's the fucking point of it all?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at someone like Superman. If you take away his powers, you'd think he's
just man.
But you'd think he'd have absolutely no capacity, as it was shown in Superman 2, to deal with physical altercation, because he's never had to deal with it in the mortal sense. So he has no sense of boundaries or requirements and all that, and you get his shit kicked out of him, which is what happened. So, all right, well... Any final thoughts about Black Panther? Just before we just jump off, those final two credit scenes were...
they're weak leads into Infinity War, but they were really Care Factor Zero lead-ins. And
can I just fucking throw in this where Bucky Barnes survived? It's like, what a surprise, he survived. Thanks.
He survived. He was entombed in a box from memory.
Hasn't he survived about 48 times in this fucking franchise?
I just expected her to say, well, you know what, Armless... I've just built you this vibranium arm, and here, let me just clip it on for you, in case something attacks us from the universe.
Oh, well, what I was thinking? I was thinking, she might do that, and he might say, oh, what do I owe you? And then he'd fall over and find his leg has been amputated, and she'd go, cost you an arm and a leg.
And you thought my jokes were bad.
Anyway, that's it from us at the jump off point. If you like what you hear, subscribe. If you don't like what you hear, subscribe. Anyway. We have a Facebook page and we have a Twitter. You can hit us up in the comments or on the social media. Until next time.
See you later.
See ya.